What I do as an Armenian for the genocide is I take part in the annual protest, which happens on April 24 in Hollywood. As an Armenian, I take part in the protest because I think it's important for all Armenians to take place because it displays unity, it commemorates the genocide, we gain awareness for the genocide and the events that took place in 1915. But most importantly, it displays unity amongst all types of Armenians in the community, whether it's Hayastansis, Belutsis, Farskahais. We actually come together for the same cause. Another reason why I do it is because it gains national media coverage, and eventually it's going to lead to the recognition in the U.S. government. And it seems to me like the more and more we do it, we get more non-Armenians to take part. And that just gains support for our call for justice.
I think it's not true that the older generation cares more about the Armenian genocide than the younger generation, because as we can see, the youth is very active in trying to get the Armenian genocide recognized within the smaller communities and globally as well. As we can see, with the little Armenian marches, the protests in front of the Turkish embassy, and going to Montebello to the Armenian Genocide Monument. Everybody participates, and we definitely show our respect to the martyrs that we had.
The Turks, that's exactly what the Turks wanted. Turks wanted us to be separated so we can all hate each other. They wanted Armenians. Their main plan wasn't to have the Armenian genocide and kill the 1.5 million. Sure, that was one big part of it, but their main plan was to destroy us, destroy our culture, to get us to become Belutsi, to get us to become Farskai, to get us to become Hayasansi, and to get us to just like a melting pot throughout the world. Have Armenians blend in with every other culture and forget our culture. They wanted Armenians to be extinct. That's what they wanted, like you were saying. That's why there's Belutsis, there's Farskais, there's Hayasansis. That's what the Turks wanted. And it's sad to say that that's what's happening a lot of times, that we have to separate. What's the Farskai's opinion? What's the Belutsi's opinion? What's the Hayasansi's opinion? We're all Armenian. We shouldn't stereotype. We shouldn't generalize. Oh, Belutsis care about it more than Hayasansis. Hayasansis care about it more than Farskais or Farskais. Vice versa. We shouldn't do that. We're all Armenians. Some individuals care more than others, and we shouldn't give the Turks what they want, and that's to get us extinct. That's to get us to tear each other apart.
Here, hundreds of thousands of people gather in Tsitsarnakaberd, which is a monument, for those who don't know. It's a monument commemorating the Armenian genocide. And the history behind it is very interesting. In the Soviet Union, in 1965, when Armenia was part of the Soviet Union, there was a big protest. Thousands of people stopped working and they flooded the streets. And so they demanded that the Soviet Union recognize the Armenian genocide. So basically within days, within weeks, the Soviet authorities decided that, you know, let's build a monument to commemorate, and they accepted it. So this goes back very far, 40, 50 years. This activism has been very important in Armenia, even under an oppressive regime. So it's continuing today, and I'm very glad to see that it's not generation to generation, it's going strong.
In my experience, I've seen that all kinds of Armenians care about the Armenian genocide, whether you're Persian Armenian, Lebanese Armenian, Iraqi Armenian, you're Armenian from Armenia. When I went to UC Davis, it was a place where in the Armenian Student Association we had all different kinds of Armenians, and even the main organizers of the association and all the events we put on, we were a range of all different kinds of Armenians, and all of us equally were passionate about it and worked hard at putting on educational events on campus to raise awareness about the Armenian genocide and Armenian issues. And we put on events for the 4 years that I was there.
I have a roommate who's Armenian who introduced me to the culture and introduced me to other people who accepted me into their lifestyle, I guess is what I would call it. I have experienced many different aspects of the culture already. I've myself learned a lot about the Armenian genocide and shown a lot of sympathy about it towards my friends and everyone I know from ASA. And in return, being from Guatemala, my country has also had a genocide. And the sympathy has been returned towards me, knowing that, yes, my family has suffered and my country has suffered just as the Armenians have. And the fact that they accepted me, knowing that I've suffered the way they have too, has meant a lot to me. Basically, my experience has been that all my Armenian friends, everyone I know who has taken me into their culture and treated me the way they would treat each other, just shows that they have sympathy for not only themselves and what they've suffered, but for others like me who have also suffered similar consequences.
So the story of the Armenian genocide isn't just the story of the Armenian genocide. The story of the Armenian genocide has a legacy, and that legacy is what we saw after what happened in 1915, moving on to the Holocaust, moving on to Kosovo, moving on to many, many other genocides that took place up to today in Sudan as genocide takes place. And if you trace it back, Armenian genocide was the first one in the 20th century. What happened? The world ignored it. What happened because of that? Up to today, it's being denied by most of the world, by Turkey, by the United States. It hasn't been accepted. Future genocides are repeating. So if we want to say never again, then it's time to admit the Armenian genocide and move on from there. And that's the fight that the Armenian community is fighting. The Armenian community being the first people of the 20th century to experience genocide, to feel what that tragedy is like, I believe it's our responsibility to be at the forefront of the fight against other genocides, of trying to stop other atrocities from taking place, because like Greg is saying, we understand what it means to go through a genocide, to go through massacres, and we feel what those people are feeling more strongly than I would say other people would. And that's why our organizations today are at the forefront of that fight. So if you look at the Armenian National Committee, for example, they're fighting the fight for Darfur.
There's this misconception that Armenians are the only ones who've ever cared about the Armenian genocide, but that's not true, because after World War I and before World War II, many Jewish writers were actually writing about the Armenian genocide, such as Franz Werfel and many others. And that's because they had some kind of foresight that told them that they weren't immune to genocide, they weren't immune to the same thing, and they almost felt it coming. And they used the Armenian genocide as a tool to show the world that this kind of atrocity is not going to be accepted.
Two girls that started Darfur Action Committee at UC Irvine were Armenian, and they continue to be involved in the cause, as do I, and together we are leading Darfur Action Committee at UC Irvine, and we're encouraging Armenians, Arabs, any other ethnicities to be a part of this cause, but especially Armenians. So we're trying to reach out. Last year, as co-chair of Darfur Action Committee, we tried to make as many ties with UCI ASA as possible, and for us to gather around together, not only just as Armenians, but as humans, to be involved in this issue of Darfur, because it's completely important. It would be absolutely hypocritical of Armenians at UCI and other young Armenians to ask for recognition of the Armenian genocide, but not want to deal with the issues that are occurring at this moment that are pressing and urgent.
Genocide and its denial are definitely the same thing, because by denying the act, you're silencing the voice of the people who are trying to be heard, who are trying to yell out to everyone, saying, look what happened to me, look what happened to my people. And I mean, everyone remembers that famous quote by Adolf Hitler of who now remembers the Armenians right before he carried out the Holocaust. And I mean, I believe that if someone had tried to remember the Armenians, if people hadn't tried so hard to forget the Armenians, that perhaps the Holocaust could have been prevented. You know, maybe we wouldn't have lost so many people during World War II.
Well, the genocide happened a little over 90 years ago, so the best way for it to disappear from the minds of people is not to bring it up for regular discussion with people, in all walks of life. So that's why it's very, very important to bring it up for regular discussions, conversations, not only Armenians among themselves, but also, you know, everybody else around. Powerful nations in the world who have special interest to safeguard their interests, you know, in the world. So, like the U.S., which is one of the leading nations, industrially, development-wise, everything, they have interest to safeguard their relationship with Turkey in the Middle East. So it's very important for them not to jeopardize that relationship. So whenever there's like a resolution to pass to call the tragedy a genocide, they refuse to pass these resolutions. So people, they just act out of self-interest. They don't think often of the good and social justice for all nations. So that's the main reason.
And I think politics plays a really big role in this. Countries aren't accepting it, but the United Nations as a whole accepted it. So it shows there's a lot of economic issues and political issues to why the United States and other countries.
Well, I think the Turkish government must accept the responsibility of the genocide, and by doing that, the healing process can begin, and this dark chapter in the human history can be closed. Thanks.
To me, the issue of genocide and denial are one and the same. I mean, as a student at UCI, I can recall 2006, we held a candlelight vigil commemorating the genocide. And as a genocide survivor was giving her account of the atrocities around her, we had Turkish nationals show up and disrupt the meeting and do all they could to incite us to try to attack them maybe. They're just being completely rude.
See, and that disgusts me because you have to think about it, like a 97-year-old genocide survivor is standing up there and it's like she's giving her heartbreaking account of what happened to her, and I mean, if you're not even gonna have respect for what she's saying, at least have respect for her, you know? It probably took a lot to get up in front of a crowd and say that, and I mean, it just comes back to how no one can really open their mouth and speak about this genocide openly without being chastised for it, without having one voice from somewhere saying, like, yelling out, no, that's not true. I mean, honestly, do you think anyone would ever try to say that the Holocaust did not occur? Like, if any kid tried to say in the school, no, the Holocaust, I question the Holocaust, I don't believe it actually occurred. I mean, like, can you imagine any, like, and I just believe that, like, the Armenian genocide should have the same sort of respect and the denial itself being carried on for so many years, it just really takes a toll on Armenians in general. It makes the fight so much harder.